Oh,
Kia, are we ready? Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Livermore Indivisible's general meeting. This month, we are fortunate to host a forum featuring the three candidates for Alameda County District Attorney, Pamela Price, Terry Wiley, and Jimmie Wilson. Before we begin, Livermore Indivisible would like to thank the Independent, Livermore Vine, and Pleasant Weekly for their sponsorship. And many thanks to those who submitted questions for our candidates. The format of the forum. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves and their qualifications for the position. They will then be given 2 minutes to respond to the same question generated from questions we received from our email request. All non-participants will be muted. At the end of this period, questions from the Q&A portion of your screen will be selected. Please add your questions to this section and address them to all of the candidates. No individual or personal questions will be asked. Our final few minutes will feature closing statements from the three candidates. Candidates, if you would like a question repeated, please ask. And if I make a mistake in your order, please let me know. The timer will be visible on screen. Please respect your time. All right, so to begin with your opening statements, Mr. Wilson, you're up first.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jimmie Wilson. Thank you, Livermore Indivisible, Pleasant and Weekly, and the Independent for hosting tonight's candidate forum. Thank you to everyone in the audience. I appreciate you taking your time to listen to us today. My candidacy for Alameda County District Attorney is rooted in my journey in life. I grew up in San Francisco, Bayview, Hunters Point area. Many of my friends and neighbors suffered from the tragedies of illiteracy, unemployment, homelessness, shorter than normal lifespans. It is that understanding that guides me in everything that I do. As a young man, I received my first job through a community-based outreach program. This program was a group endeavor by the Bay Area Urban League, the EEOC, and the San Francisco Redevelopment Agency. It was that opportunity that gave me a career as a plumber in Local 38. I was a plumber for 16 years. Well, during my time as a plumber, I suffered a serious back injury, and that led to my transition into a new career. While raising a family, I went to school at night at Lady College, transferred to UC Berkeley, entered law school at Hastings, and then straight into the district attorney's office. I was over 40 years old when I started in the office. I like to say my moral compass was already set. I used that moral compass to guide me in my 16 year as a deputy district attorney with the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. Over 85% of my career has been trying cases, serious complicated cases like child sexual assault, homicides, and gang prosecutions. My reputation in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office is as a hardworking, ethical, and compassionate prosecutor. This is why in Alameda County criminal justice community, these are some of my strongest advocates. I built my reputation in the legal community as a strong advocate for justice and a guardian for our community. I'm running for Alameda County District Attorney because Alameda County is my home and I'm compassionate and passionate about my community. I moved here in the early 80s, 30 years ago with my wife. We raised 3 kids. My wife and I both work and live in Alameda County. My children attended school in Alameda County. I'm running for Alameda County District Attorney to create a positive change in my community for my children. I'm running for District Attorney Alameda County to bring accountability and prevention and community safety. I'm running for Alameda County District Attorney to fix the divide between law enforcement and the community. I'm running for Alameda County District Attorney to bring ethics to the community justice system. My goal as Alameda County District Attorney is to keep our streets safe and our community.
Your time's up. Okay, thank you. Thank you. And Ms. Price, you have 3 minutes.
thank you. I need the screen option, please. to be able to share my screen. We have
Yes,
to
you
fix
can.
that. Say again.
You should be able to.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right. Okay, I'm ready. And thank you. My name is All right, can we start this over again? Sorry. All right, there's a timer ready now. Thank you. My name is Pamela Price. My story begins in Cincinnati, Ohio. On April 4th, 1968, I was deeply, deeply traumatized by the assassination of Dr. King. I got involved in the civil rights movement and I got arrested in a civil rights demonstration when I was 13 years old. I got tracked into the juvenile justice and the foster care system. And I literally made it from the streets of Cincinnati to Yale College by the grace of God. I came to California into Alameda County to go to law school after I graduated from Yale. I've had a 30-year career as a successful civil rights attorney arguing against racial and sexual harassment, even as high as the United States Supreme Court. I'm a mother and a grandmother, a survivor of sexual assault and domestic violence. I've also had a great legal career in Alameda County. I've bought and sold 2 office buildings in the heart of downtown Oakland. I've been honored by the California State Legislature as a champion of justice, a social justice advocate, and Alameda County Woman of the Year for District 18. I've received 3 certificates of congressional recognition from Congresswoman Barbara Lee and 1 from Congressman Mark DeSalle. In 2002, I was named California Lawyer of the Year for employment, and every year since 2004, I've been a Northern California super lawyer. I want to use a portion of my time to share a slide because in addition to being an attorney, I've been an educator. I've trained police departments and I've worked in the nonprofit world. The criminal justice system looks sort of like this. When in Alameda County, when the police arrest someone, they have 3 options, 3 legal options. 2 of those options lead to the district attorney. The district attorney then has 2 legal options: divert or charge and prosecute. The Alameda County District Attorney's Office receives they receive about 43,000 cases each year from the police, and they prosecute about 65 to 70% of those cases. The current model pushes most people down this path. In fact, less than 1% of the cases were referred to alternative disposition in 2019. According to the state's data, however, 61% of the people who go down this path, or almost 2/3, will reoffend within 3 years. Our system is, in fact, broken. Santa Rita County Jail is the 5th largest facility in this country, and many people in there suffer from severe mental illness. We want a criminal justice system that treats everyone fairly. I want to thank the conveners of this event, and I thank you all for coming.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Wiley.
Thank you. First, I want to thank the hosts of today's forum and all of the sponsors and everyone who is in attendance. We can have peace and justice in our system of justice. To bring peace to our streets, we really have to ensure that we have one system of justice for everyone. Not one for white people and one for Black people, not one for the rich and not one for the poor. We need one system of justice that's fair to everyone and protects everyone. You know, I have the experience and empathy to make my call for one justice a reality. You know, as a Black man from a working class family, I'm the youngest of 12 kids. My dad died when I was 7, so I had no illusions that what I had to do and what my mission was in life, and that was to get my education to make something of myself. You know, my work as a prosecutor has always been about more than a conviction rate. It has always been centered on justice, fairness, and safety. You know, today as the Chief Assistant District Attorney of Alameda County, I'm the #2 ranking district attorney and the first African-American Chief Assistant in the history of Alameda County. I've handled some of the most complex criminal cases in the history of Alameda County, including cases that were unpopular, such as the Oakland Riders case. But being safe in our community means that you have to prosecute cases, but you also have to keep people from being singled out because of where they live or because of how they look. You know, I've managed every division in the district attorney's office with the exception of our consumer and environmental protection division. And I've been the head of our juvenile division. And from the 2013 through 2017, we saw a 70% decrease in the number of juveniles that were held in the hall. And that has continued to today, so that today only the juveniles that have committed the most serious offenses are held today. And those generally involve murder, attempted murder, and just the more serious offenses. You know, I'm also the head of our diversity, equity, and inclusion, which provides training for all employees of our office to raise awareness of implicit bias. You know, really to have an equity in the administration of justice, you really have to have an office that reflects the community it serves. That's why I've been endorsed by the biggest civil rights attorneys in the country, including Benjamin Crump, who represented the family of Breonna Taylor, Lanita Baker, who represented the family of, Ben Crump represented Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. And I've also received the endorsement of the Bay Area's own John Burris. And the reason they've endorsed me is because they know I will be a guardian for a fair and equitable system of justice.
I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your opening statements. And for the beginning of the first question. The Alameda County DA's office has approximately 150 attorneys, 60 police officers, and 9 offices, and represents more than 1.5 million residents. Question: what applicable experience do you have running a department this size, and how would you ensure a smooth transition and continuing effective operation in the DA's office? 2 minutes, starting with Ms. Price.
Thank you. My experience includes both running my own firm for the past 30 years, where I've had numerous employees and I've organized teams of lawyers across the country, particularly when we went to the United States Supreme Court. Having hired and fired many people, trained people, worked, having internships, relationships, as well as also my experience as the interim executive director of the San Francisco Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, having worked there, having then been the head of the board, chairwoman of the board of directors of approximately 24 lawyer board. And we both hired and fired employees and handled budget, not quite the budget of the DA's office, but certainly I've had a lot of managerial experience as well as dealing with people in different realms throughout Alameda County. I've been working with community organizations. I've been working with other lawyers for decades now. And so I feel like I've had a great diversity of experience that will, as well as the management experience that will allow me to come into the office, organize the teams, organize the staff, and work both collaboratively with the public defender's office, with the probation department. I have an understanding of how the district attorney's office fits within the public protection division of the Alameda County. And so it's important that we have someone that brings a lens both from a business perspective as well as a social justice perspective if we want to achieve the changes that we all believe and say are necessary. And so I feel very confident that I'll be in there. There will be a learning curve and we will all go through transition because we're changing some fundamentals about how the office operates to achieve the mission, the stated mission that is currently not being achieved in this county. So thank you. Helen, you're muted.
And Mr. Wiley, 2 minutes.
Yes. Well, as I stated earlier, I am the current chief assistant of the district attorney's office, and I've run every division in the district attorney's office. I've run our South County felony trial staff. I have run the juvenile division, and I think I'm the only person that's run the juvenile division in this race. And that's a very important experience because the juvenile division is one of the systems that feeds into the adult system. And so you really have to be in tune to what's going on with juvenile when you look at the overall criminal justice system. But I've run our biggest courthouses, and now I'm the chief assistant. But in addition to being the chief assistant, I'm our director of human resources. I'm also the director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And from the perspective of the being the director of human resources, you really have to look at the business side of the office when you're talking about what's going to be your ability to make hires and where you're going to put the resources of the office, and looking at the overall budget of the office. And I have a lot of experience in that area. And then additionally, not only have an experience inside the office, also outside the office. I've been appointed to the Board of Trustees of the State Bar of California, which is a $149 million organization that we helped manage as a member of the Board of Trustees. I'm currently also on the criminal justice of the ABA's Criminal Justice Standards Committee, where we set the criminal standards for the prosecutors, both federal and state, and defense attorneys, both federal and state. And so my overall experience of just the overall criminal justice system, and then more specifically inside the district attorney's office, has more than prepared me to be the next district attorney of Alameda County.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Wilson, same question.
Thank you. I started my career in 1980, starting my own company. I started a rug cleaning company, which ended up employing most of the members of my then football team at College of Marin. It was a bonded company. We had contracts with Wells Fargo. We had contracts with some of the car dealerships in San Rafael. After that, I transitioned to a company called Broadway Mechanical, where I ran the warehouse. We had millions of dollars of contracts with many of the companies around in the city of San Francisco. We had the Cable Car Barn, we had the Sheraton Palace, we had some of the biggest contracts that you could think of. And it was my job to make sure that every single driver got off to all the job sites. I managed around 25 people at that time. Currently, I am a member of the NAACP. We go out and we train police officers. We do something that's called community policing. It's a program that was started over a year ago. We've trained the San Leandro Police Department. We've trained the Hayward Police Department, BART. And what we're trying to do is train officers in how to do their jobs better and how to go out to the community and help people. Part of the job of district attorney is not just holding a position, but teaching people how to do their jobs the right way and running an organization that has ethical standards. And I think because of my background and who I am, I'm the right person for that job.
Okay, thank you. All right, question 2. What specific challenges does the DA face in Alameda County, and what changes would you make, if any? Mr. Wiley.
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is really transparency. I think that one of the major problems with our criminal justice system are the disparities that exist within the system. And I think that at all levels of our criminal justice system, you see disparities. When I took over our juvenile division, I was shocked at the number of disparities that existed in the juvenile system. And I immediately went on to address those disparities. So I think that one of the biggest challenges is to increase transparency and to shut down the disparities that exist within our criminal justice system. I think another challenge that we face are, and this is on the safety side, that I would make it a priority. Number one priority on the safety side is to address guns. And the proliferation of guns and gun violence in Alameda County is out of control. And we will work with law enforcement to put forth great efforts to eradicate the use of guns and gun violence in Alameda County. So again, I don't want to underestimate the disparities that exist within the system, because it is the disparities that cause so many people to distrust the criminal justice system. When from the outside looking in, they see great disparities in the treatment, particularly of African Americans and Latinos by the criminal justice system. So I think it's imperative, and it's a big challenge, but it's imperative that we increase the transparency and we shut down the disparities wherever they exist in our criminal justice system. And then on the safety side, it's imperative that we address the gun violence that's occurring in Alameda County.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Wilson.
The biggest problem in Alameda County right now is violence, is the rise of crime, and the fact that a lot of people don't feel safe in the streets. I grew up in a pretty tough neighborhood where crime was rampant. And one of the things I know about my condition and conditions of people just like me is that we want a criminal justice system that's keeping us safe, a criminal justice system that is proactively trying to prevent crime and not just reacting to crime. One of the reasons why I'm in this race is because I feel like we are letting down our communities, especially our Black, brown, and poor communities. I know that there are people out there today, some of them listening to this forum, who are just worried about their children being able to go out at this, walk the streets, go to the store, buy a carton of milk, because we aren't proactively trying anything to reduce the number of homicides, the number of shootings in our community, the number of robberies, the number of burglaries. I am the candidate that is, I believe that we need to be proactively trying to touch people in our community, bring our community together with law enforcement, with our office, and try to find solutions that reduce the number of people involved in the system. I'm not saying you can incarcerate your way to a safer community, because that's not how it works. I'm saying that we proactively have to have strategies in order to reduce crime, and I'm the person who's set to do that. Neither one of my opponents, I believe, have that agenda.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Price.
Can I have the question read back, please?
Of course. What specific challenges does the DA face in Alameda County, and what changes would you make, if any?
Sure. Okay, thank you. I believe that public safety requires public trust, and the Alameda County District Attorney's Office suffers from a dire lack of public trust, as does most of our criminal justice system. And there are a number of factors that play into that. Number one, as alluded to by my other candidates, is the racial disparities that are so stark and glaring in our criminal justice system that if you are a member of either a Black community or brown community, you know that you are targeted, often unfairly, and over-prosecuted by the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. But the disparities also extend to religion, to gender, and to income. And so we have a crisis in our community of public trust. And without public trust, we can't have public safety, because people won't cooperate with the police. They won't believe that the system is fair, it's going to treat them fairly. And so it makes everything far more challenging for the district attorney's office to actually administer justice in the county. The second factor that leads to a lack of public trust and therefore a lack of public safety is a lack of transparency. That for decades, the district attorney's office has operated in the darkness without any accountability to the people whom it is committed to serve. Most people have no idea how the DA's office functions or what they actually do or how decisions are made. And the third factor is a lack of accountability. We are desperate for police accountability in this county. And as long as the district attorney's office does not recognize that they are independent lawyers and should be operating as ministers of justice, we will continue to have the same kind of failures that we have in our district attorney and our criminal justice system. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this is a multiple part question mainly about charges. 2 minutes each. We're starting with Mr. Wilson. How would you decide what charges to prosecute and which considerations are most important to you?
That is a simple question. It should be simple for any DA. You only charge what you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. The problem that we have with the criminal justice system today is that, and it's not just with my office, I could say it's with most district attorney's offices, we use the complaint as a way of leveraging people to plead guilty. I've always been against that. I've always talked to my colleagues about who charge cases, about how to charge cases, what not to charge. Example, I recently saw a case where someone charged a burglary where it was simple trespass. No one was living in the home, so it's not a burglary. And the only reason why you would charge that is to have leverage to get someone to plead. Well, that's unacceptable. And as district attorney, I will train my fellow DAs how to use their discretion wisely. I will tell them that our jobs aren't to charge people to get them to plead guilty. It's not all, you win when you do justice the right way. And as district attorney, we need to be training our fellow DAs how to charge cases, when to charge cases. If in the case of that I just gave you the example of, there's no way you can prove a burglary beyond a reasonable doubt. And because you couldn't prove burglary beyond a reasonable doubt, why are you charging burglary? So it's very simple. It's not complicated. We just can't use the complaint, our information, anything like that to coerce people into pleading guilty. That's the problem.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Price.
Unfortunately, Mr. Wilson speaks the truth. When I started my career as a criminal defense lawyer in San Francisco, overcharging by district attorneys was endemic, and that was 40 years ago. And it is baked into our system at this point that overcharging does occur. As district attorney, certainly I will forbid that, and I will do everything in my power to prevent that from happening, which will cause some discomfort and what some people would consider chaos in the DA's office, because we're changing the standards. And so we have to be cognizant of that. For me, the district attorney's challenge in Alameda County and the cases that I would prioritize have to stem from public safety. We know that we have an epidemic of gun violence, and so I would prioritize those cases. And I want cases brought to me that are not based on racial profiling, that are not based on gender profiling, that are not based on income status. I want cases that reflect the actual facts of the case and the harm that's being caused to people. We know that a lot of the violence in our community is also domestic violence. And as a domestic violence survivor, I'm very cognizant of that. And I want to prioritize those cases. We've got to get to the heart of what is causing the violence in our community, because everybody wants to be safe. And we've got to do what we can not to criminalize mental illness or homelessness and or being someone who is recently released from prison. And so it's important that we establish some basic minimum standards for what cases are a priority and what cases need to be charged and how we're going to dispose of cases. And we certainly have to increase the use of alternatives to incarceration dramatically beyond what we're doing now. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Wiley.
Yes. Well, I think when it comes to charging standards, I think one, you got to make sure, and we have tried to do this, to make sure our charging DAs understand that just historically, there was quite a bit of over-incarcerating going on, particularly Black and brown folks in the 90s and the first decade of the 2000s. And what we tried to do is correct that trend. And so about 65% of all criminal offenses are what we would call low-level criminal offenses that are either misdemeanors or what we call wobbler felonies. And you know, the whole principle that we try to get across is that justice comes in many forms, and you have to be able to use good judgment in deciding whether or not a case should be in the criminal system or not. And so we make sure our charging DAs know are all of the alternatives to incarceration, what kind of diversion programs are available, what kind of programs that provide alternatives to incarceration. Is a particular crime motivated by poverty, mental illness, or substance abuse? Because then we take a whole nother look at that. Is it a veteran that we should put in veterans court? There's a number of different factors that we want our charging DAs to go through when they look at these cases. And really the whole purpose is to find a different trajectory for the majority of the people coming through the criminal justice system. Now, the cases in which are the 20 to 30% of the serious and violent felonies, you have to look at those differently, because those are cases that have resulted in tremendous harm to not only individuals, but to the community. And so we want to make sure that those cases are given the evaluations that they deserve, and that proper charges are made on those particular cases. But I think overall, you have to make sure your charges understand philosophy.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Price, you're first on this one. Will you prosecute for property crimes seeking a prison sentence, especially if the accused has multiple related offenses, as examples, car break-ins and catalytic converter thefts? If not, why not?
It depends. I recently had my car stolen. My whole car was stolen, and they took the catalytic converter. They did it to get the catalytic converter. Also, a friend brought a church van to my home and parked it in front of my house, and they stole the catalytic converter from the church van. Okay. So when the police were called in my initial for my car, the officer asked me that question: do you want to prosecute? And my question was, it depends. If you're telling me that this is a ring of catalytic converter people that are stealing this, then yes, like the ones that the Livermore police found, and I commend the Livermore police, because Oakland does not do that. In Oakland, they take your car, they take your converter, and nothing happens. And for me, what was key is if we're talking about a 15-year-old kid, I'm not I don't want to send a 15-year-old kid to prison. I've got to find another way to try to save that kid's life, as opposed to throwing it away. Like I said in my opening statement, almost 2/3 of the people we send to state prison reoffend within 3 years. So it's a revolving door. As the district attorney, my job has to be to break that revolving door, because that's how I'm going to reduce criminal activity. I don't want to keep cycling people through the system and have them come home, recommit. That's not protecting public safety. So again, it depends. I want to prosecute people who are engaged in economic crimes that are that's their business. Yeah, I want to get those people. But people who are doing stupid stuff, even for economic reasons, if I can find a way to intervene in that and break that cycle of incarceration, then that also is my obligation. And I feel like that's important for us to do for public safety.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Wiley.
Yes, I have to admit, I don't necessarily disagree with Ms. Price's assessment on in this particular area. But I think that, well, you know what, can you repeat the question real quick?
Of course.
I want to make sure I answer it directly.
Sure. Will you prosecute for property crimes seeking a prison sentence, especially if the accused has multiple related offenses? As examples, car break-ins and catalytic converter thefts. If not, why not?
So I'll tell you what I've learned in 30 years of being a prosecutor, that one size fits all policies are normally not the best policies, because these individuals that come to us, even some of the crimes are motivated by different reasons. Sometimes the crimes are motivated by just sheer poverty, and individuals coming from some of the lower socioeconomic areas. Some is motivated by substance abuse. Some is motivated by sheer mental illness. And so if you have this one policy that fits all, you will have a lot of people falling through the cracks. And so I think you have to look at these cases on an individual basis to find out what's motivating these crimes in order to properly address them. If you have someone whose crime is motivated sheerly by poverty, well, you know, you may want to find an alternative to incarceration and try to get that person on a different trajectory, even if he's had multiple offenses. And then there are some individuals that you have to bring them into the criminal justice system just so that you can get jurisdiction over them. And that, and there you may have to have them work with the court in order to get this person on the right trajectory. But as a general rule, for property crimes, I think that you have to look at these on an individual basis, and there may be some cases that warrant a person going to prison, but there also may be cases that warrant a diversion program or trying to get the person mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment, and to help the person find a job. So I think you have to just look at these cases on an individual basis.
Helen, you're muted.
And Mr. Wilson, sorry.
That's okay, thank you. It's really simple. We have to hold people accountable. The question is how we do it. How do we do it? We have to look at people as individuals. In your example, I don't have enough information to know whether or not this person deserves prison or not. I'd have to look at their history. I'd have to look at what they've done in the past. Have we given them programs that they failed? Why did they fail those programs? To give a simple example, I don't believe that we can adequately answer the question. Let me give you an example. I recently was in a court on a case where this gentleman had stolen a car. He was taken to Santa Rita. He was released. He stole a car out of the Santa Rita parking lot, a probationer officer's car, drove it back to the original car lot that he originally stole the first car, and then broke into that business and stole another car. That is a simple answer for me. That gentleman needs to sit down. He needs to go and do some time, because obviously his level of criminality has risen to a point to where he has to be held accountable. We have to change his behavior. Sometimes as a district attorney, you have to make the tough calls. And sometimes those tough calls mean that some people do have to go to prison for crimes that they commit. But most of the time, we want to try to find a way to divert individuals. We want to do individualized justice. We want to find out why a person is committing a crime. We want to find out if the criminal justice system can help that person. Accountability doesn't mean incarceration. Accountability means that you're going to take responsibility for what you do, and then we're going to correct that.
Done. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Wiley, you're up first on this one. What are your thoughts on the death penalty and life without parole?
Well, as a general rule, I oppose the death penalty. And the reason I oppose it is because I think that there has been too much disparity in the way it's applied. So I oppose the death penalty. And the alternative, if you have a crime that's committed where the other penalty is life without the possibility of parole, then it really depends on what the crime is we're talking about as to whether or not that's an appropriate sentence.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Wilson.
I am also opposed to the death penalty. When I was interviewed for the DA's office coming out of law school, I made it clear that I would never try any case that sought the death penalty. I believe that the death penalty is applied to Black, brown, and poor people at a higher rate than anyone in society. So I am totally anti-death penalty, and I've been anti-death penalty my entire life. As it relates to life without parole, I've been a trial attorney in the DA's office since 2004, and I have seen some of the most heinous crimes that you could ever think of. And because of that understanding, I know that there are some people who, and it's not going to be the popular thing to say, but they should not be out on the streets because they have done some pretty heinous things to other members in our community. I also think that using life without parole should be only used on those crimes that are so heinous, that are so bad, that they shock the conscience. And sometimes I believe that DAs seek what we call LWOP, life without parole, unjustifiably. So that's a simple answer to me. I feel like you should never use the death penalty, and life without parole should be just reserved for those most heinous crimes.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Price.
I believe and know that the same kinds of disparities that have been used to for the death penalty have also been used, are riddled throughout the criminal justice system. Whether you're talking about life without the possibility of parole, whether you're talking about probation, terms and conditions in sentencing, as well as charging, as well as parole hearings, the racial disparities are well documented. And so I think that we have to be realistic about that. We also have a criminal justice system that says when we send you to prison, it's called the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. So if we're talking about rehabilitation, if we have the audacity to adopt that as the name of our prison system, then I think we have to really come to terms when we're talking about committing people without the possibility of parole, no matter how heinous the crime is. Because I understand we have been incarcerating young people, 15-year-olds in Alameda County, basically to life without the possibility of parole. When you give a 15-year-old kid an 85-year sentence, you're putting that child away for the rest of his or her life. And so when we look to see how have we administered justice and who is in fact incarcerated, when someone gets to be 70, 75 years old, are they really a danger to public safety? Are they a threat to public safety? Maybe, maybe not. Again, we do have to look at the individual circumstances, but we need to be very, very clear about the injustices that have been used throughout this criminal justice system for the last 40, 50 years, and that includes life without the possibility of parole as well as the death penalty.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Wilson, you're up first on this one. What factors will you consider in whether to charge law enforcement officers when they have killed or injured a civilian in line of duty? As an example, Jacob Bauer in Pleasanton in August 2018.
Well, anytime anyone commits a crime, and that includes a law enforcement officer against anyone, I believe that that person should be charged. whether that's murder, whether that's assault, whether it's something other than what we just spoken about. When we're talking about police officers are they are keepers of our safety. They should be held to a higher standard. Anytime that an officer breaks the law, it is the duty of the district attorney to charge that officer. I talked to officers throughout the county, and I've told them exactly how I feel, that if you break the law, if you hurt someone, if you do something that's illegal, you're going to be charged. And that, whether it's an officer, a public figure, no matter who the person is, that we should charge people and use the same standards across the board.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Price.
One of the commitments of our campaign is no more double standard, because in Alameda County, we know that the close relationship between our police departments and the Alameda County District Attorney's Office has created a double standard and a skewed, very deeply skewed standard of justice for police officers that ultimately has cost us dearly, because it fundamentally has eroded public trust and made us all less safe. And that's just in the general scheme of things. On the specific standard, I agree with Mr. Wilson. We have to hold police officers to a higher standard. We give them a badge and a gun and the ability to come into our lives and our homes up on a moment's notice. And someone who has that kind of power needs to be held to account for the misuse of that kind of power, not according to both the intent, the language, and the spirit of the law. And that's what has not happened. Jacob Bauer's death at the hands of the Pleasanton police was a great tragedy. And yet our district attorney's office essentially exonerated. And that's been the problem, is that officers have been able to come into our homes and hurt people. And they've been allowed to do that with impunity because they have a relationship with a district attorney that turns a blind eye to that kind of injustice. On the day that you call a police officer, it is probably the worst day of your life. You do not want police officers coming to your home. I understand that. But when they come, sometimes you have to call them. And when they come, we have to insist that they treat people with dignity and respect, that there is a fact of caring, compassion for the people that are there. It's not the guardian, the warrior mentality that we've seen in Alameda County, and that all life and all people are precious in this county.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Wiley.
Well, I think that when it comes to police officers, you have to understand that they are the only profession in society that can engage in justifiable homicide. And that is that gives them a lot of power out there on the street. And so they have to be held to a higher standard than others on the street. But at the same time, when my campaign talks about one justice, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about no matter who you are, everybody gets treated the same, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're a civilian, whether you're a police officer, it doesn't matter. Everybody should be held to the same standards. And so I think of the three opponents in this race, I'm the only one who's actually prosecuted a police officer for misconduct. So, I will approach as the district attorney of Alameda County, I will approach that job the way I have for the last 30 years. I will make decisions based on principle, and I will also follow the standards that we have had set. And so I think that my record speaks for itself, that I will hold anyone accountable.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, this is a two-part question involving the relationship between the DA's office and law enforcement, even more. Ms. Price, you're up first with this one. How would you describe a desirable relationship between the DA's office and law enforcement? And please include in your response if you have already or will in the future accept campaign donations from law enforcement unions and associations.
I believe that the public safety of Alameda County and the safety of every community requires a level of cooperation, collaboration between the district attorney's office and every law enforcement agency, whether it's police or sheriffs. Having said that, I understand, and I need them to understand, that I am a lawyer, an independent determiner of how justice should be administered and what should be prosecuted. And that is not going to be determined by the police department. I'm also acutely aware of the history of racial disparities throughout this county by police departments. And so I have to, as part of the transformation of this system, I have to address that and be able to speak to them about what we have to do to fix that problem. I am fortunately the only candidate in this race that has actually both sued police officers and held them accountable and gotten punitive damages against officers as well as represented officers. And so I've had the kind of relationship where I've been able to talk to officers on an intimate level. I understand the challenges that they face on a professional level. As I mentioned earlier, I have trained police departments, and so I'm very comfortable engaging with police departments. And I will hold bad cops accountable for bad acts, and I will strive as the district attorney to intervene in a way that makes it possible for officers to perform their duties in a constitutional manner. And that has to be the standard. And that is my strength. I'm a constitutional lawyer. I will not accept and have never accepted contributions from police associations. I think that their involvement in politics is wrong, and they should not be allowed to bully candidates or public officials.
Thank you. And Mr. Wiley, same question.
Yes, well, I will not accept financial donations from police officer associations or unions. However, I will seek the endorsement of my candidacy by police officer unions, because I think that, if you want to make change in the criminal justice system, you have to have all the parties at the table, and the community has to work together. And so it's important that we have everybody working together to make the kind of changes that the criminal justice system needs to make it a more fair and just system. And so, no, I will not accept donations from a police officer association, but I will seek their endorsement.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Wilson.
Yes, this goes right back to where I came from. It came from where I grew up, in neighborhoods like mine, in troubled neighborhoods. We need police. We need more police. We just need good police. And I am a member of the executive branch of the NAACP. And right now we are going around the county training police officers about community policing, de-escalation, getting out of their police cars and engaging the community. Starting a partnership with members of the community. It's really important. It's a really important part of the history of policing in our urban communities. When police officers engage and they engage in the right way, it works. I can tell you from my own experience that when I was a kid, my PAL coach was a police officer. The first time I went to camp, it was a police officer. I believe that the DA is the top officer and the top official, law enforcement official in the county, and he has to have a relationship with the police. I have the endorsement so far of the Hayward Police Department and the Oakland Police Department, and I've told them I will not accept campaign finance contributions, but I will accept their endorsements. because if you're going to change policing in our community, you have to have police at the table with you, and they have to listen to what you have to say.
Okay, thank you. The timer seems to have disappeared.
Yeah, I timed myself.
So hopefully it will reappear. And I'm sorry, and I was looking for the timer. Did you answer whether you will take?
I did. I have the endorsement of 2 police departments, and I've told them I will not accept campaign contributions.
Great, thank you. Okay, the second part of that, and hopefully the timer will reappear, is, and we're starting with Mr. Wiley. What is your position on sharing the county jail and police budgets with separate services for those dealing with mental health and addiction issues?
Yes, you know, I am very familiar with the Babu litigation and the oversight that the Department of Justice did on the Sheriff's Department in terms of how they're dealing with mental health. And I think that there are some issues to be discussed. You know, I met with a group of organizations and parents whose children are system involved and suffer mental illness. And one of the questions I asked them was, how satisfied or dissatisfied are you with the way that our system of justice dealt with your children in the system? And, you know, to a person, they were all very dissatisfied. And I think that the Babu litigation and the solution that so far that has been proposed, I think, you know, it could use further discussion. But at the same time, I think that there is consideration of turning North County Jail into a facility to house folks that are suffering from mental illness. You know, one of the problems that we have in our county is that the system does not properly address those individuals that need more long-term mental health treatment. And in order to give those folks the treatment that they need and they deserve, you have to have beds to house those individuals. And I think that that is the discussion on a county level that we need to continue to have. And I mean, in incorporating behavioral health, the Board of Supervisors and other agencies to see what kind of solution we can come up with in addition to the Babu litigation on how to come up with a more long-term solution, particularly to housing those individuals that need the longer-term housing and services.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilson, same question.
Thank you. I think we need to be more proactive in finding solutions to what to do with people with mental illness. The one failure of the criminal justice system is that we seem to think that one solution fits all, and it doesn't. When I become DA, I'm going to work closely with the Public Defender's Office and also our criminal justice partners to find alternative solutions for people with mental illness. When I was a kid, my mom was she was a social worker in San Francisco, and she worked with people with mental illness. And when Prop 13 passed and all those facilities and all that help went away, she was frustrated. And she talked to me about what we should be doing with mental health, how our society is letting down people with those type of challenges. And I noticed from my short 16 years in the district attorney's office that there is no mechanism for people who come in who are suffering from mental illness. And when I become DA, I'm going to sit down with professionals, with law enforcement, also with the Public Defender's Office and our criminal justice partners. And we're going to find ways to find housing and beds and facilities and help for people in need.
Okay, thank you very much. And Ms. Price.
What is the question, please? And I do need the timer. Oh, good. The timer is back. Good. Can you give me the question, though?
No, sure. And we're not keeping you exactly to time since we haven't had it so far. What is your position on sharing the county jail and police budget with separate services for those dealing with mental health and addiction issues?
I am adamantly opposed to allowing police and the sheriff to become the mental health providers of Alameda County. And that's essentially what we've done. As Mr. Wilson points out, for the past, at least his last 16 years, the district attorney's office has not even begun to address the issues of mental health in any comprehensive way. There's a mental health court, but it is sorely underused, whether it's someone who has committed a crime because of some level of mental illness, all the way from minimal issues with mental health, as well as serious mental illness. And we are incarcerating approximately 20 to 25% of the people in Santa Rita County Jail have serious mental illness, and they are not getting treatment. We have underfunded the community-based solutions. We have underinvested in a social services safety net for people with mental health, and we have overinvested in incarceration. And that's been the pattern for Alameda County. And that is why we have the Department of Justice threatening to place our sheriff's department, our mental health department, and our mental health system under receivership. And I look forward to being a partner with those from the California Department, those lawyers that have looked at this and identified the problems, identified the solutions, and it did not come from the DA's office, but clearly the DA has to be a critical actor in remedying this problem. Yes, we need more facilities for more beds. We need more housing. We need to address the issue both in terms of on the front end, who we are actually prosecuting and incarcerating, as well as when people are released from prison who have essentially are now suffering from mental illness because of the harm that they suffered at the hands of the criminal justice system.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilson gets us first. Do you think the sheriff, also acting as coroner, poses a problem? Why or why not? And is there a solution?
Also acting as coroner?
As the coroner.
I don't see it as a problem. I've tried maybe, I can't even count the number of homicides I've tried, but I've tried a lot. I think that the physicians under the sheriff's umbrella are all ethical, hardworking individuals, and I believe that there's no conflict of interest between the sheriff's office and the coroners. A lot of the coroner work is actually, some of the coroners are actually independent contractors who, although they're working under the coroner's umbrella, they actually work for themselves. I can think of two right off the top of my head. So I don't see a conflict. I have no problem with the coroners working directly under the sheriffs.
Okay, and Ms. Price.
Yes, I do think that there is a conflict of interest where the sheriff has the duties of the coroner. And again, we've seen that displayed in cases over and over again where people have died in police custody, whether they were shot, whether they were strangled, whether they were suffocated. We have not been able to get independent, clear information about how someone died through, and it erodes, again, a question of public trust. People don't trust the sheriff in this county. It appears, quite frankly, that he has his own agenda, that he has mismanaged the jail. The jail is the most dangerous place to be in Alameda County. And so when someone dies in the jail, and then the sheriff who has custody over this person and responsibility and should be held accountable for how the person died or why the person died, and yet the information about what happened has to come from the sheriff. And so we're asking the sheriff to give us the information that might implicate the sheriff in unlawful activity. That's inherently a conflict of interest. So that's one of the clear problems that we have. And it has shown up again and again when we talk about people who have died in police custody from local jurisdictions. There's always a question whether or not we're getting good information. And, you know, I, having sued the county, I'm aware that the county is very risk aversion, has a very strong risk management department, and they're always looking how can they avoid the paying a settlement. But unfortunately, we're accountable for that. And so we do need independent coroner services, and many counties do not have this kind of structure. And there's no reason for us to have it like that either. It's inappropriate.
Thank you. And Mr. Wiley.
Well, I disagree with Ms. Price. In my years of trying numerous homicides, Alameda County has some of the most highly skilled pathologists who do those autopsies anywhere in the state of California. And so I think I don't see a conflict. I think that the professionalism of the pathologists doing the autopsies is very high in quality. And I have not seen any conflicts. I do not think that I don't know of any of the pathologists that operate in Alameda County that would sacrifice their reputations for handling an autopsy for anything less than being professional in the presentation of those autopsy protocols. So I do not see a conflict with the sheriff continuing to be to supervise the coroner's office.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Price is up first. What outreach activities and plans do you have to mitigate racial or gender motivated attacks on individuals? For instance, LGBTQ+, and more recently, those of Asian descent.
Well, I have to disagree with the premise of the question. The attacks on Asians is not a new thing. It's been going on in California. The great Frederick Douglass actually came to California when he was alive to speak out against, violence against Asian people of Asian descent. It is an issue, as is violence against African Americans, which happens unfortunately too often in Alameda County. So my outreach activities will involve primarily talking to young people, because it is so important that we reach out to our young people, that we address differences at the beginning. Because all of us, one of the things I can say is that I started, when I was in the civil rights movement, I started off as a nationalist, but as a Black nationalist, over time being exposed to and working with people of other races. I'm a kid from Cincinnati. When I went to Yale, I didn't know anything about Puerto Ricans or Asians or anybody, but I've been around the world and I've learned that we all bleed the same, that people are the same, and that we have to break down the barriers that divide us, because more unites us. And so that's the lesson I want to be have as part of my message to young people. And then in terms of outreach to communities, we need to address gang violence and how that impacts folks engaging one with another. As well as just making sure that we are doing everything we can to improve and increase a respect for life and a respect for diversity. And whether that's through education, through the schools, through community groups, through the police, we have to do all of it. And the district attorney has that role, and I'm happy to play that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wiley.
Yes, well, when the Asian hate cases began to occur, you don't, being a Black person and understanding what it's like to be seen as something other than, and understanding the history. I brought a certain compassion and empathy for what the Asian community was going through, but you don't really completely understand it until you're down on the ground and you go visit them in their community and you see the looks on their faces, and you see the fear, and you see the concern that they have with just going outside and walking down the street to go to the grocery store. And so what we did is we put together a special unit in the district attorney's office to specifically address the Asian hate cases. And we'll continue to provide the resources that we need to provide to address those specific cases. And with the LGBT community, we will provide the same support on those cases that we do with the Asian hate cases, because in all cases, it's intolerable. And as a district attorney's office, we're not going to tolerate it.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. Part of my strategy is to connect my office with the community. I believe that one of the major problems with most DA's offices is that they talk to people, they talk at people, but not with them. I believe that we need to directly engage community-based organizations dealing with LGBTQ, dealing with victims' rights, dealing with Asian hate, dealing with any type of problem in our community. I also believe that we need to directly fund community-based organizations so that they can serve the people in our community who are being left behind. Part of what's going on in Alameda County is that these groups feel isolated. They feel like they don't have a voice in the criminal justice system. I recently spoke to a group who were really concerned that their loved ones had been murdered and that they couldn't get anyone in the district attorney's office to talk to them. There was no connection between that group and anyone in my office. And all they really wanted to know was information. All they really wanted to know was what was happening with their cases. And I think that if we have a foothold in the community, part of my strategy is to do community forums where I'm going out talking to small groups, like telling them what the district attorney is doing, talk about what their problems are in their community, see what I can do to help. Have DAs in my office who are going to be assigned to different areas in Alameda County where these individuals can go out and speak to these groups and listen and bring this information back to me, and hopefully we can act on it.
Okay, thank you. Our last of these questions, starting with Mr. Wiley. We have some highly dynamic California DAs now who are making significant changes. How will your policies compare or contrast with those of George Cascone of LA County and Chesa Bowden of San Francisco, for example? And would the possibility of recall influence your policies?
No, I think that, I've been a prosecutor for 30 years. And, for 30 years, I've been about bringing fairness, safety, and justice to the criminal justice system. And I will continue to advocate for those policies and making sure that we have a system of justice that works for everyone. But I think you have to look at individual counties when you look at the policies of Chesa Boudin in San Francisco and Mr. Gascon down in Los Angeles. What I don't want to see in Alameda County is folks that think they can go in with an empty grocery bag, fill it up with items, and walk out the store because they don't feel they're going to be held accountable. I, as district attorney, I'm not going to allow Alameda County to become that kind of place where folks think that they can just commit crimes and not be held accountable for them. At the same time, I do think that there needs to be change to our criminal justice system, which is why we stand for one justice. And we stand for getting rid of a lot of the disparities that are in the system that undermine the confidence that the public has in our system of justice. And there are policies that we're looking at and that we will continue to look at that are consistent with the progressive prosecutor. But in Alameda County, for example, Oakland, we have very, very serious violent crime. And, sometimes you have to give those cases a more traditional approach in order to keep the community safe. So there are some policies that the progressive prosecutors have advocated for that we can work with, but there are others that don't exactly fit Alameda County.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Yes, if we are talking about change, then I guess I'm a progressive because I think we need change. When it comes to some of the policies that Mr. Bodine and other progressive prosecutors have, it's not their policies that I have a problem with. It's the execution of those policies. Some of it, and like most of it, I agree with, because I grew up in an era where I saw people in my community be incarcerated for offenses that I really thought shouldn't have been eligible for prison. When I came into the district attorney's office, we were putting people in prison for petty theft with a prior, where a gentleman stole makeup from a store, and I, it never really. The reasons why we did it never really satisfied me. I think that justice, any kind of policy, any kind of progressive policy has to be individually applied. We have to have accountability. That is the number one action. I think where a lot of the policies where Mr. Bodine and other progressives have gone wrong was that they did not put the accountability part of it along with the policy part. I believe that if he had shifted some of his strategies on the front end, that some of his policies would have been more successful. So when you say, am I progressive? I think that means that am I for change? And I am for change. I'm for change, but I'm for smart change. I'm for change that keeps people safe. I'm for change that holds people accountable. And I think we can do both.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Price.
I am part of a progressive movement of district attorneys across this country that goes far beyond Chesa Boudin or George Gascon. It includes proudly Dinah Becton in Contra Costa County, and Kim Fox in Chicago, and Marilyn Mosby in Baltimore, and a number of, there's approximately 80 of us who have successfully been elected to represent the people of our jurisdictions. And so when people say, well, Mr. Bodine's policies, Chesa Boudin has barely been in office a year. So we cannot, to say that his policies have somehow failed, he hasn't even gotten a good start yet. Alameda County is very different from any of those places. I will say that I'm inspired by George Gascon's neighborhood courts program, which he started in 2011 in San Francisco. There's 16 neighborhood courts, which have done dramatically reduce the recidivism rate for people who have gone through those courts. Alameda has wonderful neighborhoods, and it's a way for us to expand our alternatives to incarceration, to give our residents a real opportunity to be engaged with how we administer justice and to have a say-so that is so desperately needed. I hate to say it, but I've lived in Oakland for almost 40 years. And I learned some 15 years ago, Oakland's homicide solve rate is only 30%. So under the current administration of justice, it is not keeping us safe. If you live in Oakland and you commit a murder, you have a 70% chance of getting away with it under the way that we have been doing it. So we have got to change that. And that has nothing to do with progressive policies. It's about public safety. And every progressive prosecutor is about public safety and doing it in the smart way and not using racial disparities to justify how we administer justice.
Okay, thank you. We've now finished this part of our questioning, and I'm going to turn it over to Marla, who is going to be asking questions from the Q&A of viewers.
Thanks, Helen. Yeah, we've been collecting the questions. Some have been answered, so I'm just going to go with some that have not been, that I've heard anyway. And so this first question will go first to Mr. Wilson. If you're elected, what is the first action you will take as the Alameda County DA?
We have a budget problem. We have a severe budget problem. The first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to hire an independent auditor to look at the books, to find out where the money is, to figure out where we could tighten our belts, to figure out what we can do to support our DAs. Because our budget is so bad, we are not able to get witnesses that we need. We're not able to give support to victims that they deserve. So that would be the first thing that I would do. We need to solve our budget problem.
All right, thank you. Next, Mr. Wiley.
Yes. Well, in terms of the comment that we have a budget problem, I honestly don't know what Mr. Wilson is talking about because he has not even really seen the budget. But with that said, I think the first priority is, as I've stated, I believe that we can have peace and safety on the streets and in the communities of Alameda County. And I think that it is an absolute priority to address many of the disparities that are occurring throughout the criminal justice system, because it is one of the factors that most undermines the community's trust of the criminal justice system. And therefore, I think transparency has to be a high priority. And then secondly, I think you have got to address guns on the streets of Alameda County. I think that the proliferation of weapons on the streets of Oakland and throughout Alameda County pose a tremendous danger to everyone. We plan on implementing a crime strategies unit in which we will rely much more on data and intelligence in terms of dealing with a lot of the individuals that are committing a lot of the violent crime. And we will work very, very closely. That unit will work very closely with the ceasefire division of the Oakland Police Department in order to eradicate many of the individuals, or not the individuals, but to get these guns off the streets and lessen the violence that is occurring in Oakland on a daily basis, with murders and shootings. And it really almost looks like almost a public health crisis.
All right, thank you. Sorry, your time is up. Sorry. And Ms. Price.
I have a plan when I'm elected to establish commissions, independent, multidisciplinary commissions that are going to look at the entire criminal justice system from the perspective of the DA and where the DA's office has the greatest impact. We will look at victim services and how we are providing victim services and how we can improve that. And I suspect that will be my first initiative. I'm also very concerned about reentry, and we need to have a reentry commission because across Alameda County, we are receiving people who have been incarcerated by the district attorney's office and may have been unfairly or unjustly incarcerated over a period of time. So we've got to address that. And that will include also using our conviction integrity unit. We'll have a commission that looks at mental health. This is a dramatic issue for us that we have got to get a handle on. Again, the Department of Justice is standing by, prepared to put this county's mental health system and our criminal justice system to some extent under receivership. And so we've got to answer that initially. It has to be one of the priorities. We will have a gun violence commission that will look at gun violence not only from Oakland, but we'll look at it across the county. And it will also address the high rate of suicides by guns, which is the major factor in when you look at how people are being killed by guns, it's suicide. And that's a mental health issue. Gun violence is a public health issue. And so we will address that from the perspective of the district attorney, but in collaboration with stakeholders, with community organizations, with police, with county officials throughout, and creating a number of commissions that will address, and then we will move forward from there once all of us have had a chance to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question will go to you, Ms. Price, first. What have been your proudest achievements and growth-inducing disappointments in your careers?
My proudest achievements have been winning cases, certainly winning a racial harassment case in the United States Supreme Court is every lawyer's dream, just to go and argue. And so the fact that my office was able to not only litigate the case to that point, collaborating, as I indicated, with lawyers across the country, preparing the case for oral argument and then arguing it and then winning it, and then being able to come back and try the case again and get a verdict for Mr. Morgan, because my firm's mission was to bring justice and to provide access to justice and to make justice available for everyday people. And that's what I've been doing. My greatest disappointment has been where I have not been able to accomplish that, whether through particularly the last case I lost. I think I represented a class of women in the California Department of Corrections, female correctional officers, and we fought that case for 13 years. And it was heartbreaking that we encountered a judge who was hostile to the notion that women should even be correctional officers or lawyers for that matter. There were 4 co-counsel, myself and 3 other counsel, and the 2 women on the team were treated dramatically worse than the 2 men on the team. And so that was very challenging and required a lot of growth for me. And it was that opportunity that I took to say, okay, I'm going to take a break from the practice of law and I was blessed to be able to take a sabbatical for 3 years. And so I've had the opportunity of learning from my experience and overcoming challenges, both from the time I was a young girl in foster care, and that's probably my greatest growth experience, was surviving the streets of Cincinnati to get to Yale College and then being able to graduate and go to law school.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Yes, my proudest accomplishment is what we're doing through the NAACP. We are out there. There are 5 of us going around to different police agencies, talking about community policing, talking about officers getting out of their cars and engaging in the community. What's really important is that this isn't just a program. We're post-certified, meaning that these officers get credit for this training, but this isn't just training about police. Is training about the history of policing in the United States and the impact that has on Black, brown, and poor people. We take them from slavery through Reconstruction all the way to the current policing model that you see today. And what we're telling them is what we need from you as law enforcement officers. We need you to get out of your cars. We need you to engage young men and young women differently. We need to, whenever you stop someone, explain the stop. Whenever you are wrong, apologize. We're talking to them about implicit bias. We're talking to them about giving them information that they haven't ever received before. We recently did a training up in Roanoke Park for the sheriff's office for their cadets and their coordinator. And one of the coordinators said to us, like, we should have done this like 60 years ago. It was that impactful. One of my least favorite things about my career is a case I lost. It was a sexual assault case. And the kid that was the victim of the case, he believed that the jury didn't believe him. And it was so painful talking to that young man and letting him know that the justice system, it isn't about people believing you or not. It's just the way that things work. And that was probably the worst time in my life just
All
to
right.
deal with that.
Thank you. And Mr. Wiley.
Well, I think one of the thing that I'm going to just say one thing that I'm very, very proud of is that, as I've told you that, I've really spent my career, although we prosecute crimes, I really have focused on having a system that focuses on fairness, safety, and justice. And as I said, being here 30 years, I saw a lot of over incarcerating that went on in the 90s and the first decade of the 2000s. And we created an expungement program. So we partnered with the NAACP, and we would have folks come in from the community, and we would assist them with expunging their records to try and reverse some of the things that occurred during the time of over incarceration. And I had a older gentleman come in one day, and he said, "Please don't call me at home because my grandkids don't know anything about this." And he was so ashamed of that he had this particular event on his record. And the day he came into court, and the court was able to expunge that from his record, and to see the look on his face, and more importantly, we helped hundreds of people who now can go and apply for a job because they have no criminal record. It's been completely expunged from their record. It gives them an opportunity to, almost it gives them a new life. And I would say that that has just been a beautiful thing to see. And we continue to expunge. We have an expungement court now where we handle all of the expungements on a weekly basis.
All right, thank you. This next question, we'll start with you, Mr. Wiley. What do you see as the biggest impediment to change in the criminal justice system in Alameda County, and how will you address that as the district attorney?
Well, I think, anytime you're trying to change a system, you're going to get pushback at different levels. And I think that it's just very important that as the district attorney of Alameda County, you can make a lot of change when it comes to the disparities that are occurring at different levels of the criminal justice system, because you are the loudest voice in those areas. And there are things that you can accept and things that you don't have to accept. And so I think that really addressing, and these disparities have been going on for decades. And I think that is it's imperative that be the focus of the next district attorney of Alameda County.
Thank you. Ms. Price.
I think the greatest impediment that we will face after I'm elected is the culture of our criminal justice system. Whether you look at, as I looked at the pathways to criminal justice in this county, it starts with the police, the culture of the police, that they have been accustomed to operating without accountability, that they have been accustomed to not having the support, quite frankly, of a district attorney that says, this is the law and this is the standard that I'm going to hold you to, that we've been asking them to do things for one thing, to deal with cases involving mental illness. And so that culture, how police have girded themselves to protect themselves over those whom they serve, I think is something that's going to be very challenging to address. Also addressing, once the police bring me a case, the culture in the DA's office, the expectation that we are going to overcharge, the expectation that we're going to continue to impose unconstitutional money bail, which has continued unabated despite the Supreme Court decision that says it's unconstitutional. So the deputies And the structure of the office has been used in a way that is detrimental to the community for so long. And people have been invested in that. And I think that's going to be very challenging for us to address. And then the court system, which has been lockstep with the DA's office, with the police, they've all been operating in one way. And I think of it as a great ship that I'm coming on board and I'm saying, okay, you've been going this direction for about 60 years now, and we have to change direction. We're going to make a left turn. And that's going to be very hard for a lot of people who have been doing it in operating in a broken system and are
Thank
comfortable
you.
doing that.
Thank
Thank
you. Mr. Wilson.
I think the biggest impediment is that we need new leadership. Leadership is really important. I think we need to be more transparent. I think we need more equality. I think we need more justice. The criminal justice system itself, the criminal justice system is archaic. Many of the patterns and many of the practices of the system are set back in before the turn of the century. I mean, when you think about some of the things that we do, some of the ways that we treat people, it's wrong. I also want to bring back a sense of community between our law enforcement partners, not just the police, but I'm talking about defense attorneys and the public defender's office. I think there needs to be a level of civility. I think we need to start communicating more, because when we don't communicate, justice isn't served. One of the things that I can tell you recently, I handled a case that a public defender brought to me. It was an 18-year-old kid. He had just turned 18, and someone in my office was sending him to prison. And it's not, this person is a good DA. I respect him, but we should not send 18-year-olds to prison when they pick up their first offense. He turned 18 a week before the crime was committed. And what I did is I sat down with the public defender and we ironed out a plan. I talked to his parents. We found him a place to go. We got him counseling. We did all this stuff on the front end so that hopefully this guy will take advantage of this program and it will get him straight and get him into a different way of life. We need to do justice differently. That's what needs to change.
Thank you. And Mr. Wilson, this next question is for you. You mentioned transparency. This question has to do with that. She asks, the majority of community members do not know what goes on within the DA's office, charging, case dispositions, et cetera. For example, our DA's office dismisses a large number of simple drug, theft, and other minor crime cases, while a law-abiding person is fined $400+ for rolling a stop sign. What would you do to bring more transparency into the office and actively release statistical information to the public?
Well, that's part of my platform, is that we're going to make statistics available for the public. We're going to have a website to where you can log in and to find out what we're charging and who we're charging and what we're charging them with. We also are going to have statistics as it deals with programs like diversion, programs where we'll talk about cases. We'll have information about cases we charge and cases we don't charge. They'll be by race, by gender, and also by economic status. Meaning, was that person indigent? There will be cases that aren't going to make it to the system at all. There are going to be cases where we're going to empower the police to actually cite individuals and put them into community-based programs. One of the problems that we have in the public is that a lot of people don't know what the DA does because there hasn't been an opportunity for them to get out there and speak to the person. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have individuals in my office go to different areas in the community and have forums where we're going to sit down and talk to people and tell them what we're doing and how we're doing it and take their questions and find out what their problems are. If crime has risen because of catalytic converters, then we're going to find out what we can do. How can we change that? What kind of strategies can we create to counteract that? What is it? What is behind the catalytic converter theft? We're going to provide people with information that hasn't been provided before. I believe that we work for the public. They pay our salaries, so they should know what we're doing.
Thank you. Mr. Wiley?
Yes, well, it's interesting because, you know, exactly what Mr. Wilson said we're not doing is exactly what we're doing. So I meet with NCPCs in Oakland almost on a monthly basis, where Oakland has these organizations called NCPCs that are divided into the different districts of Oakland. And I have been a consistent speaker at the NCPC meetings to basically explain what happens when someone's arrested. I explained the process of police officers bringing the case over to the DA's office, how that case is evaluated, what happens when a charging decision is made on the case, and then what happens once the individual goes into court. We explain that whole process to them so that they have a working understanding of how the system works. Additionally, we want to find out what's going on in this district and what's causing you the most problems in this district. And, you know, one of the things that, for example, in Oakland, there is a consistent issue in all of the respective NCPC districts of having one or two homeless people that are causing a lot of issues. So, you know, you get a sense of what's going on out there on the ground in these communities, and you try to assist them in resolving these problems. And we have had DAs out in the community, and I mean all communities, for years. And we plan to continue to do that under my leadership.
Thank you. Ms. Price?
Yes, as a resident of Alameda County for almost 40 years, I've had the opposite experience of what Mr. Wiley described. And it's consistent with that of the questioner. People don't have no clue what the DA is doing. I'm the first person to run for this seat since 1966. The last person that ran for this seat was a civil rights lawyer named Bob Truehalf, and it was 1966. And because no one challenged the district attorney, it was just passed down, passed down, passed down. There has been no transparency. There has been no accountability. If you go to the DA's website, you will see nothing about how many misdemeanors are being charged, how many felonies are being charged, how many serious felonies are being charged. When the Urban Peace Movement took what data they could and did a 2-year study, they concluded that less than 7% of the cases charged by the DA's office were actually serious felonies, serious violent felonies. We need to know that. We need to know if the police have engaged in, if someone has died in police custody, we need a DA investigation that's timely. We have repeated instances where someone has died and the district attorney has, by gun violence, because that's one thing, and the report has been delayed for years. The case of Jody Woodfox, where for 12 years, the district attorney's report not only was wrong, but it was the only public information available. And during that time, the officer, an OPD officer who had killed 2 unarmed Black men, was promoted to a homicide detective. So this is part of the problem that we have in terms of solving homicides in Oakland. If you compare the DA's website in Alameda County to those around the country, you would be astonished at what is not being given, what information is not being given to the public. And I will change that as well.
Thank you. I think this will be our last question. It starts with you, Ms. Price. All candidates stated that gun violence is a top problem, yet the DA's office isn't joining other DAs across California to sue ghost gun manufacturers. How will you, as the Alameda County DA, address ghost guns?
I have publicly stated and taken a position that I would not only join the ghost gun litigation that's been initiated by progressive prosecutors in the Bay Area, but if it's not pending by the time I'm elected, because I won't take office until January of 2023, then I will look to initiate that ourselves. I have been an advocate for reducing gun violence since before I ran for district attorney. And in 2018, I was the only one, the only candidate who committed to take aggressive action to reduce gun violence throughout Alameda County without relying on stale and old and failed strategies that just over-criminalize our youth and target Black and brown communities and do not get to the root of the problem. We know that ghost guns right now, the Department of Justice says if we can attack ghost guns, we could stop perhaps as high as 30% of the guns coming into this county. And yet our district attorney has said nothing on this issue. And again, I have taken an aggressive position. I have been active in this community fighting against gun violence. It pains me every time a child dies, a person dies on our streets. Gun violence is totally unacceptable to me. And I have stood on corners with Soldiers Against Violence everywhere saying somebody died here and you need to care. Because whether it's Oakland, whether it's Pleasanton, whether it's Fremont, Union City, Alameda County, none of us want to lose a loved one to gun violence, whether it's on the freeway, which is tragically happening in our community and across the Bay Area. It's not just Alameda County, but the pandemic has wrecked and brought us all to a new level, and we have to address it aggressively. And the district attorney has to be a leader in that effort. And so I will be.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson? Mr.
I agree with Ms. Price. We need leadership that is out there fighting against gun violence. When Rebecca Kaplan filed her lawsuit against ghost gun manufacturers, I joined in that press release. I actually had a press release of my own, basically saying how much I think that ghost guns they are and they have been the desirable weapon of criminals on the street. And if we want to reduce gun violence in Alameda County, we need to do something to get ghost guns off the street. We need a district attorney who's out on the front lines telling people to get guns off the street. You can't remain dormant in the shadows and allow this to happen during your watch. One of the tragedies that I've seen over my career is the impact that gun violence has on families. I've sat down and spoken to multiple families where their child has been killed by gun violence, by stray bullets, by bullets meant for them, by young people just walking down the street. And if we don't attack gun violence in our community, we won't ever be safe. And we can't have a district attorney who just won't speak out on it. We need a district attorney who's out there on the front lines talking about ghost guns, talking about getting guns off the street. I am proud to be an Alameda County district attorney. I am proud for the job and the work that we do, but we need to be proactive in getting guns off the street. If we don't do that, if we don't attack any manufacturer that's poisoning our community with any types of violent mechanisms, then what kind of community are we going to have, and what kind of office are we going to be?
Thank you. Mr. Wiley.
Well, as I told you in the very beginning of this candidates forum, I thought the number one priority as the new district attorney of Alameda County is guns and getting the guns off of the streets. I completely agree that the ghost guns have become a major problem. I'm not going to speak on the litigation involving the ghost guns because there have been talks about joining the Attorney General's litigation. So I'm going to leave that there. But what I will say is that I think that the impact that the ghost guns and guns in general are having on Oakland in particular and Alameda County overall has been a tremendous problem. And, you know, I was talking to a friend who lives in a fairly affluent neighborhood, and she indicated that her neighbor had just put an iron gate around her house in this affluent neighborhood because her daughter was fearful of crime. And, you know, she told me the story. I said, well, you know, that's a shame that this young girl, they had to put this iron gate and she lives in this affluent community. I said, but I told my colleague, I said, but you know, there's also a 10-year-old girl who lives at 84th and International Boulevard, whose parents are also concerned about her safety, and that we have to address these issues so that all kids, no matter where they live, no matter what zip code they're in, that they can feel safe when they go outside their homes. And as the next district attorney of Alameda County, that's what we're going to be about. And I will just finally say this, you know, there's a reason why the top civil rights attorneys in the country have endorsed my candidacy.
Thank you. Your time is up. Helen, I'm going to turn it back to you for the closing statements.
Okay. And we're ready for closing statements, which 2 minutes each. And we'll start with Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Helen. We live in one of the most incredible communities in the country. Nowhere in California can we find so much diversity in the way that we look, the way that we think, the way that we live, and the way that we dream. There is one realization that we all share. We want to feel safe in our homes and in our communities. We must realize that the district attorney in Alameda County has a responsibility to do their job ethically, responsibly, with every single person in mind, whether you live in the hills or in the flatlands up north or down south. We must work to reduce the amount of crime in our community. We must work to keep our criminal justice system fair. We must be proactive in reducing crime. We must increase the level of opportunities for first-time offenders, giving them an opportunity to change their lives. I'm the only person on this panel who's had who this is their second career. I came into this office with an understanding of the everyday person, the needs of the everyday person. I'm the only candidate in this office who's talking about bringing the partners of the criminal justice system together, both the police, our community. I'm the only candidate in this program who's talking about accountability and crime prevention and community safety all in the same umbrella. I'm the only candidate in this on this forum who believes that we can steer the police in the right direction, that we can give them the right tools to help our community, to make our community strong. I'm the candidate who's talking about ethics in the criminal justice system, ethics in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. I'm the candidate who's talking about not ignoring the harm done to our community, but trying to find a way to solve that harm.
Oh, sorry, Reno. I'm sorry. You've gone over time. I'm sorry.
No problem.
And Mr. Wiley.
Yes, thank you. Helen, thank you and Indivisible for having us at this forum. You know, as I said in my opening, we can have peace and safety. Peace will bring us a justice system where there is a decreasing level of disparities in the system, where there's greater transparency, and that the community has a greater sense of trust of what is happening in our criminal justice system. We can have safety, and it's very, very important that we have safety, and that when folks walk out of their homes, they can feel safe in the day and at night. And we have been advocating for the safety of the community from day one. And how you do that, you have to attack what is going on right now with guns in our community. The guns in the community are causing the biggest problem in terms of people feeling safe, but you also have to, there has to be accountability in the system. And that, you know, folks have to, but with that accountability, you have to have alternatives to try and get folks on a different trajectory. And so it's really a kind of a combination of it all, trying to get folks on a different path by doing expungement clinics and helping people clear their records, by finding diversion programs if they have substance abuse problems or mental health issues. And sometimes if they are just, many of their problems are born from just straight poverty. You know, you have to be ready to address those problems. And then when it comes to the more serious and violent crime, you have to deal with that so that people can feel safe in their communities. And, you know, there's a reason why the top civil rights attorneys in the country have endorsed my candidacy, because they know that I will be the guardian of a system of justice that is equitable and fair.
Okay, thank you. And I let you go over as long as I let Mr. Wilson go over. And Ms. Price.
Sure. We want a criminal justice system that treats people fairly. We want a criminal justice system that doesn't discriminate against you based on your race, your religion, your sexual orientation, your gender, or your income. That's not what we have now. And we have been living under an administration of justice that has not kept us safe. Public safety requires public trust. And the things that have undermined our trust, the lack of police accountability, the lack of racial equity, the lack of income equity, and the lack of accountability by our district attorneys as well as public officials is what has brought us to this place. When I ran in 2018, we got 42% of the vote because people are hungry for change and for accountability. And in order to obtain that, we've got to bring someone in from the outside. We cannot continue, if you continue to elect the same people who have been involved in the same way things have been done and have been comfortable in that, then you're going to get the same thing you've always had. For Alameda County as our next district attorney, I want to bring neighborhood courts. I want to be a district attorney that serves with compassion and a commitment to equal justice. I believe that the key to stopping gun violence, whether it's on the street or in our homes, because as a woman, I'm acutely aware that a lot of gun violence and a lot of violence in our community is domestic violence. The key to that is a partnership with the community. I have been a community activist. I have been someone that has been embraced by Alameda County and who has been giving back to her community. My goal is to expand restorative justice programs, to give survivors of violence and trauma a helping and a healing hand, and to bring our community together in a way that we have not done in the past, because we have got to turn the corner and step forward in 2022. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, everyone, for attending. This is the end of our forum. Thank you, all attendees. We hope you have a much greater appreciation and understanding of the vast task of the Alameda County DA and how important the leadership of this office is. And mostly thank you for all the candidates for attending and sharing your vision of the future and how we can just get better. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.